Good evening, everyone. This is Mike with Just Another G.I. Joe Show, episode number 23, which is also going to be considered our one-year anniversary special, and maybe we'll be back next year. We don't know yet. We'll see how it plays out. See if people want to keep coming back, because it's kind of hard to get some people back when they're like, God, I've been there once, some assholes went back again. Oh, I can't believe this. So, but anyways, I'm Mike, your host, and as you can see, we got a few people with us. We got Fred as usual. We got our silent co-host Rick. James Cavanaugh, I'm sure, is in the buff. That's why he doesn't have a picture showed up. And
Hello.
Bobby Vela has decided to come back 2 weeks in a row. So,
welcome to tonight's special episode, 5 Guys with Facial Hair.
that is true. That is true. And,
I like
and
it.
2.5 of us are bald. I think Bobby's partially bald there.
Yeah, I haven't cut my hair in a couple weeks, but I'll be bald tomorrow.
There you go.
Nice.
But yeah, we're 1 year. We actually had I actually sent out a lot of invites for quite a few people, and some people were out of town, Christmas parties, stuff of that nature. Or they're probably like, maybe that's the excuse they gave us because they didn't want to come back on because they're like, oh my God, those two geeks. I don't think so. But we're going to talk a little bit about FSS. We're going to talk about the last figures we haven't looked at since the last show, which I think is about, what, 3 or 4? I can't remember.
Quite a few. We got, 3 reveals Thanksgiving week?
Yeah, it was Monday, Tuesday, Friday.
Yeah,
No, Monday, Wednesday, Friday is what it was.
5 or 6. The club went for broke this and just said, you know what? They're all here.
Yeah, we got to get them out before the deadline, which is actually Monday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, which is Texas time. For anyone who doesn't know that, if it ain't your time, it's Texas time. And well, that's just how much it is. Someone actually posted on Facebook about that. He was trying to figure it out. And I'm like, the club always is at 11:59 the day of Central Standard Time, which is Texas time. So I actually subbed earlier today. Fred, you sub yet?
Friday morning.
Did you? I did mine.
I waited till the last reveal trickled out, saw Crystal Ball, fell in love.
You were going to get it regardless. It didn't matter, right?
Oh, I was it. Crystal Ball, I was going to sign up for Crystal Ball anyway.
Man.
And then the reveals just kept getting better and better and better. And, oh, yeah, I'm down with it.
Oh, I was completely sold as soon as I saw Tiger Force, so it's all said and done.
The sickness, Mike.
There's nothing wrong with Tiger Force. Did you send me that picture so I can go to that?
Yep.
Did
You got her.
Hey guys, before we get into the figures, can we just say congratulations on a year of the show? Like, that's awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yay.
And I got to say, it's all Mike, because Mike's the guy that came up with the idea. Mike's the guy that contacted me and said, hey, do you want to do this? And so it's all on that. It's all on that dude over there in Arkansas with the giant Leonardo Ninja Turtle in the background. It's all his.
And I have to push out to for people who don't know Josh with Cybercast, I probably would never have gotten this far or even doing it myself if it wasn't for him, because of him inviting me to Cybercast and then starting Galactic Gumbo. And it was kind of like I was shy at first, and then I wanted to do a podcast for quite a while, and then it was more of the point of there's no offense to Transformers, there's just so much Transformers out there. So many people do Transformers and geek shows. I'm like, I kept looking into things, and I did not see personally anything as far as G.I. Joe podcasts on a regular basis besides what's on Joe's Mind, which I think they're like a quarterly podcast. Is that about right, maybe? Or am I wrong?
Whenever they have time to record.
Yeah, I think their schedules have all just exploded with work commitments and, real life.
I think a show like this, like a live show, is something different. We did stuff, with JoeCon. We did the live episode there, which was, one of the most viewed episodes so far. With we had let's see, Daryl stopped by for a couple minutes. Savage stopped by and cashed in a deal for me. So let's see, who else did we have that episode?
Big Lob.
Big Lob. Yeah. And then we had other episodes with, I'm
We've
having
had Kirk Bazzigian.
yeah, Kurt. I mean, we've had a lot
We've
of guests
had
over
Justin
the
Bell. We've had 3D Joes. We've had
Joe
some
Cole.
designer from Hasbro named Bobby. We had that Kavanaugh guy who writes some books.
So you guys must have been out of any decent opportunities on that one.
Well, let me tell you what. I actually, I haven't talked to you since I got your book, man. And I looked at that book for a good couple of days, and I applaud you on you taking everything apart and picturing it. I mean, that's got to take some patience more than anything else. Is doing all that. I looked at everything, and and it helped me out to figure out, if I wanted to complete a certain set of figures. That helped me out tremendously. I'm picking on which ones I wanted, which is the I want to finish up the oh gosh, what is the Resolute is what I want to finish up.
Oh, absolutely,
Nice.
get rid
Because it's just that there's the small run of stuff there, and so I want to finish. I got the 2 7-packs, and then I've looked into some of the other packs, so I want to finish that up. But we've had a good year. I mean, we've had a lot of different guests, a lot of different topics. A lot of guests. I mean, more guests than I can really shake a stick at, thinking we'd ever get them to come on.
You guys really did. You took the ball, Mike, and you ran with it, and Fred, you too. Mike is super passionate about Joe, and I think that it was perfect timing when you decided to put the show up. And I know I've had a lot of fun every time I come on, and Mike got me back into G.I. Joe when we were doing Cybercast and Galactic Gumbo. So
yeah, I think your first I think you bought that one. What was it, the Pythona you bought first for me? Or Pythona got you back in is what it was.
Got me, yeah. And I really always wanted a Pythona, and that one just kind of made me look and see. That plus BotCon ending kind of made me look at what the club was doing for Joe. And then just watching some of the episodes I wasn't in and listening to a lot of the other podcasts out there and just looking at the books and stuff, like the stuff that James is putting out, it really re-energized me into Joe. But this show and you had a lot to do with that. So, and I collect a lot of stuff, dude. I mean, like, you name it, I collect it. But Joe, I can honestly say that Joe is what I'm into the most right now. It's what I'm most passionate about, especially vintage stuff too.
Right.
Love the vintage.
I'm going to tell people now, this will be the last show for this year. We're going to take the rest of the holiday season off. I guess how we started off last year. Yeah. We did the first episode right around this time, and then we were like, holidays, I just don't want to, especially doing 3 podcasts, I didn't want to be heckled in with all that, so I'll be doing just Cybercast the rest of the year, and then we'll pick back up the 1st of January, which I'm not sure on the date yet, but we'll definitely get going. As soon as they start announcing figures, reveals for JoeCon is definitely when we'll get back on in January and start getting that out to everybody. If y'all didn't know, the G.I. Joe Collectors Club had a Black Friday sale the week of Thanksgiving. Sadly, it was a little sad. I mean, there were a few things. I picked up a jammer. I got it today to go back with Captain Skip. The only thing I'm upset with was that the dial tone pack I can't get in his back without almost removing the harness, and then I can't get this big-ass gun in his hand either.
That's actually the technical name for that gun. If you look on the packaging, it says includes big ass gun.
Yeah. I have to look at my thing.
On the side of the 6 packaging. Well, real quick, I at least want to jump in and say thank you for pledging. Not to carry back, but it's hard for me with my timing with all this. But thanks, guys, for pledging for the books.
Oh, definitely. I'll definitely. If you do another edition, like the 1.1 or like 2.1. Well, 2.1 I don't have to worry about because eventually Fred's going to send me that book, I think.
I just never go to the post office.
I don't think I sent you my address yet.
What's the other thing cool about that book is you can look at someone and say, hey, I did a Kickstarter and it was completed and I received it this year, which is great. You can never do that. So
this is actually, I think, the 3rd Kickstarter I did this year, and I received. There was Dan who did the one book when we first started the podcast. I got his book. I got Kavanaugh's book, and then there was another company that did the newspaper articles in the small book, the modern, and that was actually really interesting seeing the old newspaper articles in a book of prices from toy stores and stuff of that nature, and how cheap that stuff was. Man, you think back to yourself, God, that stuff was cheap. So,
Oh yeah.
but I've received 3 Kickstarters this year for G.I. Joe, and then the only other one I haven't received, I don't know if anyone else has added to their list. It was the Larry Hama book, or not book. I'm sorry, Lama. The figure. Yeah, I think they delayed it a little bit on that because they were changing something up on it to make them bigger. I think
the Fresh Monkey stuff had some scale issues.
Yeah.
It was all coming in at like true 3 3/4, and so they were shorter than what we're used to with Joe now, which is a 4-inch line. So
the thing that sucks about that is that if Larry's going to be at JoeCon this year, that figure was supposed to be due out right before JoeCon, but now it's not out until December. So now, if this is the last JoeCon, people won't be able to get that figure signed by Larry at the show.
Yeah.
Oh, so it was pushed back till December?
Yeah.
Oh, I know it was December. Okay, wow.
They had to recut all the tools, and that takes time, and then you have to go through the production process again.
I'm kind of spoiled rotten. I'm staring at a 3D mock-up of Nick's original head of Larry Hama. When I met him, when I met him at Rollout Roll Call in 2012, he had a couple in his pocket. He's like, "Here, you want this, mate?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do." I'm like, holy shnikes, this is intense.
Is that a Hama head in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me?
I'll take a picture and send it to you for the show notes.
Cool. We're gonna go ahead.
Is all the Eagle Force stuff pushed back? It is, right?
Yeah.
Like that whole
Hey.
Yeah, the whole.
All right, we're going to go to screen share, so we'll see if we can get it right on the first try.
And this is what makes your podcast so much better than all the other ones out there, is the screen share.
So I don't screw it up.
It's my favorite part of the show. Screen share, screen share. Mike's doing screen share. We need a song for it, I swear.
Can y'all see those figures pretty good, or we need individual pictures on these?
They're kind of small.
Okay.
I mean, we don't need to see the Tiger Force one. You can just skip that and go to the others. But
shut up, Fred.
Fred, watch out! You're outnumbered, man.
All right, here we go.
The few, the proud.
This came out. Crystal, yikes. Fred is in love with this one.
Oh my God, that is so freaking gorgeous.
The legs on that, is that the same legs they used on the Dark Line?
Iron Grenadier Destro legs, baby. Same as Dark Line, I believe.
A lot of people were talking about, you look on his right leg, how the boot. See, look at the boots. That's what just throws me off a little bit about that.
Yeah, those Destro's boots are asymmetrical, and so are Crystal Ball's now. And you know what? It fits his wacky persona.
It totally does. Yeah.
You guys ever going to stop complaining about figures?
We're Joe collectors, of course not.
And ladies and gentlemen, oh wait a minute, he shaved. I was going to have our 6th man with facial hair joining us tonight.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I shaved a couple of days ago.
One of these things is not like the other.
It was griping at me about it.
Oh, if people don't know, there's John. Glad you can make it, John.
Yeah, everything's working against me today.
Okay. Well, I didn't get no response back earlier. I'm like, oh, someone else ain't coming. No, I was kidding.
No, I made it. I just, after I missed the last time, I was feeling bad about it. Some little twinge of conscience. But I laid down until that went away, and I felt better.
Took another drag of beer and went, that's gone.
Yeah. So,
so I have to ask the group of you while Mike has Crystal Ball back up on screen again.
Do we have to?
Shield or no lenticular shield? What would your preference be if in a perfect world?
You know what I really would like to see in a perfect world? Iridescent chrome. Screw the lenticular.
Okay.
That's in a perfect world. What we're getting and that, two different things. I bet money.
I would take lenticular if they could pull it off. I know that's more expensive.
Excuse me.
I can always buy a vintage one and slap it on if I really feel that way.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
I'd like lenticular. That's just I love the vintage stuff. So,
are we talking about a shield?
Yeah.
Okay. The shield, no offense, has. It's going to sound awful. I don't even know what that shield is for anymore.
It's a hypno shield.
Just tells you how
hypnotize
much.
people with it.
Wonder how it's going to fit on them though. I mean, is it going to be like a fit in the hand? Going to go over like a shield like Captain America? I mean, what?
You know, based on decisions the club has made in the past, it'll probably just be a straight retool of the vintage one. Yeah.
And again, that's fine. That fit on there pretty decently.
Dude, it's Crystal Ball. Who cares?
Dude, you're killing me. He's
That was my
reason I'm
first
signing
costume.
The I think it's just the legs on it. I mean, I'm going to keep it, but it's just the legs that are killing me on it, I guess.
I love it.
Mike, you
Why do
don't
we not
want
see
yours,
your face,
you send
buddy?
it to me.
You already got one, Fred.
Yeah, like I would like to say I like the over the top stuff and like him. I like a good Night Viper and an eel and all that stuff. But give me a raptor and Crystal Ball buddy cop movie, and I would totally be into that.
Buddy cop.
Kind of like
my
Cup in who's the other one? That one comic book.
That would be the best movie ever. It'd be Birds and Balls. You got one of them going, I'm getting too old for this shit.
Oh my god.
All right, let's see what we got next. We got who is this? Stalker with his canoe.
I could have went without the canoe with the money they spent tooling that thing back up or finding the old tooling at Hasbro. In China, they should have spent it somewhere else in the line. The figure itself is fine, but I bought a custom by Eric Arana that is exactly the same. So, for me, it's no biggie.
Will he even fit in the canoe? That's the question I want to know.
It's gonna be maybe those thighs because the pockets are pretty wide. Don't you think so, Bob?
Yeah, he fits.
I was fixing to ask Bobby if he knew or not.
We checked it.
Wow.
Nice.
Because that was an important factor, was that he had to come with the boat. Two, he had to fit in the existing tooling, so he does fit.
All right.
I have to admit, I was shocked as all get out when they did the reveal, when they first announced that he was going to come with the kayak, because I thought they were just going to do, the figure and maybe some snowshoes or something. But that kayak, that's pretty ambitious. And
Fred, do you realize the uproar that would have happened on Hiss if he didn't come with the boat?
Not to put too fine a point on it, but I don't set my watch by the opinion of a lot of those guys.
Let's just look at it all in general. There's still an uproar on his, regardless of whether it came from damn boat or not.
Yeah. I think he looks freaking good. The hat is what surprised me, is that they actually tooled a new the stocking cap's new, right?
Yeah, it's brand new. Yeah. The head's from the Tiger
so that's
Stalker, isn't it, James?
Yeah, and then the jammer.
Yeah, it's the Tiger Force. It was made for Tiger Force.
Yeah.
No,
it's a good looking figure. It's probably the best looking one out of the whole set, I think. In my personal opinion, but
I agree with Alyosha's. I mean, you can find the canoe for $1 at JoeCon.
Yeah, that's $3 tops for a complete one.
Take that tooling money and put it in some
rock and roll second gun.
Don't get me wrong. I understand the thinking behind it, and I'm not trying to take away from that. And I certainly don't want to poop on the club's efforts, because in this case they're really very well done on this particular figure, especially. And I think overall, it's going to be one of the more successful figures they've done when you look back at the entire history of the FSS in terms of translating a vintage figure into modern parts. And if you look at every decision that they've made, whether you've liked it or not, through all of the FSSs, that has always been the intent, is to copy down to the smallest detail as much as possible, what was done in the vintage line. Because collectors today, by and large, if you ask them what they want, they'll say, I want it just like the vintage, only new. And, it's not always going to be a hit. But that's what they're doing, and that's what they're striving for, and they've been consistent from the beginning about that. So,
except for the rock and roll gun, except for the second rock and roll gun. The problem when I saw the boat, I love that they went whole hog with the boat. My only problem is if rock and roll is in the same wave and he doesn't come without his great big freaking gun, it doesn't feel as consistent. Because I love that they just go whole hog. I think they should every time.
Well.
Funny thing is, the whole gun's pretty. It's another vintage part you can get.
It is, yeah. There's an answer. The good thing is there's answers to it, right? I mean,
I'm sure too. If you want to seek something that's a little more customized than just a straight vintage part, there'll be people out there that are casting it. I personally won't, but I know that I'm sure that there will be some. Bobby can attest to this too, working for Hasbro. When you're set under certain budgetary constraints, there's no fudge them, no getting around them.
No, and that's the thing. It's when I read people's comments and hear what people are talking about, and they're like, oh, why didn't they do this? They could have just done this. Just stick a second gun in. It's like it's not really that easy.
It may be a matter of a very small amount of money. Per unit, adding that piece in, but when you spread that over the whole line, there is a chunk of our tooling budget that's gone, or this is gone, or that's. So every decision that you make has to reflect somewhere else down the line in terms of where that accounts for in the money. And,
the other thing,
go ahead, please.
That gun has, I think, the barrels spin on that rock and roll gun, correct? So that's not just tooling; that's labor also. Because you got to think that in the factory, they now have to piece that together.
Yeah, it's a two or three piece gun, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of something that I wish people would take into consideration more when they're kind of making the comments. I love what the club is doing, and it's like, I get it. Yeah, he didn't come with two guns, but if he came with two guns and Stalker didn't come with his boat, it would say, "Oh, where's Stalker's boat?" But Stalker with a boat got one gun.
It is a little bit of a catch-22 across the entire thing. You're absolutely right.
That's a good thing, though. The good thing about you coming on the show, Bobby, is you can kind of help everybody piece together that some of the decisions and things like that. I think that's awesome.
It's just knowledgeable stuff. It's like once people get it, it's totally understandable. So
the one thing that's frustrating to me as a fan, and then also working with the club in the customizing class, is to see how people constantly make the same arguments over and over again, and the information's out there. About the budgetary constraints and how they build figures and stuff like that, and all you've got to do is just look, and people don't. They just want to get on the internet and gripe, and then, it is what it is. But
let me we're off just a second on this since you both since Bobby works for Hasbro, John, you've worked for the club as well, doing the custom class, being where you all stand as far as your Kickstarters and working for Hasbro and reading the comments. And knowing that you put in your effort to give us the best figure possible, but there's always complaints, critique, people complaining, why didn't you do this? Why do that? Does it make you want to go on there and be a keyboard warrior, or you just suck up and it's not worth arguing? Because me personally, I guess it's a good thing I'm not a designer, because I would take it personally, I guess.
You do to a certain extent. I'm sure Bobby can back that up. When people start getting way out of hand and their expectations are set way far out of scope, then you do take that a little bit personally. Now, I had no problem for a long time being fairly confrontational when somebody would try to call me out or talk trash about my work or whatever for years. But I've learned how to separate myself from that. Yeah, James, you've been there. And I've learned how to separate myself from it some and let it go in one or out the other. Bobby, I'm sure, can attest to this, being in a position where that's part of your job description, where you have to represent the company and the company temperament. You can't speak on it. So
it's really tough. I remember when I first started, I had a really hard time with it because it's like I'm a huge fan, and it's like I'm working on Marvel and I'm working on our Legends line, and the first stuff that came out, where it was a year ahead. So I waited, and then the stuff came out, and I'm on all the message boards, and I'm reading, and it's like when you're seeing people just rip your stuff apart, and they're not even knowledgeable, and
Right.
And you're like, wow, like if I can only tell them, like, hey, listen, I'm a fan. I'm not just doing it for a paycheck or whatever. Like, I love what I do. When I do the G.I. Joe builds, when I do the Marvel stuff, it's like I put in 110% because I want it to look as great as possible. And I remember sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, I'm sorry. I'm going to vouch because, when you told us that you did Thor and Hulk for the new 12-inch line.
Yeah.
And I saw both those in the store like a couple weeks later after you did the first show with us. And I'm not going to lie to you, that Hulk was effing amazing looking on how big it was. I mean, he was cram-packed in his package. You're like,
he's the size of a small child.
I'm telling you, man, you got to get a boarding pass for him. It's that damn big. I mean, it's an awesome figure. Now, granted, I don't collect a lot of the 12-inch line. I got Deadpool and Captain America. But, I mean, if I see the Hulk again, I'm determined to pick that one up because of how, massive. You could kill somebody with that damn thing. It's so big. But
Did you just say kiss or kill? I heard that wrong.
Kill.
We're going to knock a small child out is what's going to end up happening. But it's a good figure. It's a very good figure. It's big. It's bulky. It is the Hulk, period. That's me.
Thanks, yeah.
Well, what's the old adage? I think it's falsely attributed to Albert Einstein, but never argue with an idiot. They'll bring you down to their level and beat you with experience.
Yeah, I've heard something along those lines before. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. It's got to be kind of hard in y'all's position, knowing that y'all do everything you can to give collectors and yourself great figures, and then you got those, you got those guys who are one, they can't afford to buy it, so they got to tear it down. That's a lot of people, or two, people who are collectors and they're just nitpickers.
Yeah. Well, there's a happy medium in there somewhere, and obviously you want to excel all the way across the board in terms of design and execution with everything that you do. Put your best foot forward, but a good example is the Tan Grunt from the very first FSS. That could have been a better figure, but given their design choices to try to emulate the other 25th stuff that was out at the time, those are the parts they chose, and that's what it was, and like I said a while ago, you can see that decision making is what's driven every design choice that they've made out through the line, barring any problems with tooling allocation or such. One of the things that people just don't understand is, well, why didn't you use this part, or why didn't you use X part instead of Y part? And that tooling might just not have been available to them. That's as simple as it gets. I know one of the figures from a concept 2 years ago, the head that came on it was their third choice because the tooling wasn't available for number 1 and number 2. I didn't have anything to do with the design of it, but I heard from the person who did, and they were pretty forthright with that. It's not something that the club likes to tell anybody, obviously, and I'm not speaking for them in this particular case, but think about that. You want to put your best foot forward. You're trying to do the best you can, and you get stuck with your third choice. What do you do?
Point of interest, and Bobby and John, you two can articulate this further, but those parts don't all fit. The 25th parts on up don't fit as intricately as the vintage system did.
Yeah. No, I'm sure Bobby will echo this sentiment as well, but I've customized I've had my hands on every figure in the modern line, broke them apart, taken them apart, see what changes out, what doesn't, that kind of thing. The best, in terms of interchangeability, the best design stuff was kind of during the boss fight team's time there, because of Dave Proctor's stickiness, his particularness about making sure everything was properly proportioned, properly from piece to piece to piece. Back in Orlando, I think in 2011, was the first time I met Dave face to face, and he was doing a sculpting demo, the first one that Hasbro put on there. and he was doing hand sculpting in Hasbro wax, which they don't do anymore. It's all digital. But I asked him about a couple of bucks he had there. He had a couple of torsos, a male and a female torso, and he was actually doing additive sculpting onto those. And he said, well, that's so they all have the correct posture and proportions from figure to figure. So basically he was using that same piece, the old buck system like they used to use in the O-ring days, where everything had the same exact proportions, same exact size. You know, the ball neck was only going to be this big around and that kind of thing. So the parts from that area are probably the most interchangeable, but even then, you know, you have variances in the line, you have, you know, tooling variations, things like that. You know, Bobby, you want to chime in there on that? A little more insight?
I mean, you know, I talked to the guys about it before on the Missile Command headquarters Comic-Con set that I did. It's like trying to get those figures to match the vintage look. I went through pieces and pieces and pieces, and it's like you find a thigh you like, and you're like, all right, cool. Well, the knee that you had picked out doesn't work with that thigh, and then you know, you're just like, oh shit, you keep going back to the drawing board because you're like, this lower leg doesn't work with this knee, but the upper leg does. It's you know, when you deal with that kind of stuff, so much detail and multiple joints and articulation, you know, nothing's ever going to be 100% consistent. I mean, even the old O-ring stuff, you could pop the thighs off, and not every lower leg is going to match up with the
yeah, same thing with some of the head and neck balls. You know, they wouldn't all interchange, even though they were all similar size.
Yeah. And the other thing is we have to adjust even the heads. Like the balls for G.I. Joe are all the same, but the neck length is not the same. You'll put a head on and you'll have a ball, but it'll be too low. It'll sit like this, or it'll sit too high. So you have to have, you know, when the club wants to use stuff, I'll say, hey, listen, just let them know they need to adjust the tooling on the head, and they'll add material inside the ball joint, or remove some so that the head fits higher or lower, which is a fairly easy change to do. We do it on Marvel all the time also. So, you know, if it was a little more consistent, it'd make everyone happy. But unfortunately, it's, you know, there's too many moving parts that make every single thing work with every single thing.
Yeah. Go ahead, James.
I was just going to say, people happen to have the Rise of Cobra Strato Viper. The Air Viper, the silver one. Pop the head off, and you can see like the double ball bubble neck. They did two different tools. They recreated the tooling to better fit that head, that Wild Bill body.
Bobby, I wanted to say personally, I really liked what you did with the set for SDCC, with the exception of the articulation on the elbows. I was vocal about what I didn't like about it, but I want to congratulate you, because to my knowledge, that is the most set of Frankenstein figures that has been done, bar anything. That was full production. I mean, there were more parts mixed and matched there than I've ever seen. I'm sure that caused a tumult of headaches at the factory in China when they're trying to run down all the tools to get everything you wanted.
Yeah. Thanks for loving it. It's like my favorite item that I've worked on. There's so much to it. I could talk about that stuff forever. But yeah, that I've talked about it before in like the club interview and on here. I think it was let me look at it. Was the officer. He was the hardest build, and I think he's like 6 or 7 different figures. So yeah, it's tough. And I remember, like, because you have to go and you have to find every single project number that matches the existing tooling, so that, you know, China and the vendor can reference those parts. And I remember, like, oh man, they're gonna be so mad about this figure, because, you know, it's a shorter run, and they got to find all these tools to make this figure. But it came together, and it worked out. So you know, but yeah, it's that kind of stuff. When you have to pull a lot, it could be tedious for all parties involved.
All right, we'll get to the next figure I pulled up here. This was a Candor. I don't think it had been revealed yet either by the last show, which is pretty much a straight up recolor of a big boa. Oh,
that makes all kind of sense, you know.
Oh yeah,
that's what the original was.
Yeah.
Except for now he has 2 dumbbells and a kangaroo.
Pulling out the
instead
tooling
of
for the
usual
vintage kangaroo was a bit of a surprise. Yeah, either they
Go
retooled the vintage
Safari
kangaroo
Limited,
or
man.
pulled it out or what, man. That was crazy for them to dig that up.
Yeah. I'm digging it. The only thing we're not getting, I think, was like sticks or something like that that came with
The pugil stick.
Yeah,
The pugil sticks and the face mask, but at the same time, the last one only had one of those dumbbells.
Yeah.
He's got two, and he's a PETA nightmare because he's beaten up on a small animal. So,
as far as critiques on the individual figures, the only thing I would change on this guy is darken his skin tone a little bit more, just to set him further apart from Big Bo. I realize they're two different skin tones right now, but I would go just a little more darker.
Darker, yeah.
I would agree with that.
I wonder if it's going to come out darker because Gaucho, I remember, looked lighter in the mock-up, and then when he showed up, he was much darker.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the Gaucho was probably one of their biggest successes for a straight repaint in terms of how the figure looks, I think.
I'm gonna put my money on no, because the obvious, if people aren't aware, it's just an excuse to get Big Bo out there to people that don't have one and don't want to spend $150 for one.
Well,
so he's going to be a little lighter than he probably should be.
Those guys out there who didn't jump in on the FSS for whatever reason and are complaining that they don't have Big Boa now and it costs so much money, you know what? You could have got it at retail. You had to have a little faith and jump in on the process. Yeah. You can't be I would say it's almost impossible in this day and age to be a G.I. Joe fan and not be aware of the club offerings in some way, shape, or form. If you're on the internet at all, if you live in Arkadelphia or something like that, maybe not. But
what's the internet?
All right. So we got the Ice Viper officer. Y'all got any ideas on the tooling on this one?
It's the same as the driver.
Ice Viper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's just in the flaming moth color scheme that the club did,
Yeah.
which I was kind of surprised they went back to referencing moth.
I think if you look at the club build sets each year since they've done them, they always throw in one or two references to figures they've done. So this fits that mold. Personally, I don't have a lot of use for it, but I know a lot of people will absolutely enjoy it. And the execution on the paint style and design and all that is really great. So
Bobby can probably
ride in the back seat of the wolf.
Chime in or again better articulate what I'm about to say, and that's I'm fairly confident when you look at these sets as a whole. Let's say these are $30 figures, so they cost $15. Let's just say they might cost more, they might cost less. Maybe the Stalker, for example, costs $17, but then you have the Ice Viper officer costing $10.
Yeah,
and so you're getting the shaft on Ice Viper officer.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen what the club's cost sheets look like. I can only attest for seeing our cost sheets, and there is it's weighted across the assortment. So you have a figure with say your average deco ops for the wave is 40 deco ops, but one figure's 90 and one figure's 15. You're gonna hit your average, so it's okay. So it's totally understandable when yes, you have a more expensive figure, then you see more of a not lame figure, but just a straight repaint with not a lot of accessories because you want to find that lower end of your cost for that wave.
Well, with this figure in particular, you can see that the paint apps are the same as the retail release in terms of where the color breaks are, with the exception of the camouflage, and that would have had to be created new for this particular figure. But still, it's an attractive figure. It's a good looking piece. It's nicely executed. I'm sure that the production piece will be really sharp. I don't see how anybody would complain about it per se. It just doesn't have a huge wow factor.
I think it's cool just from not a work perspective, just a fan perspective or a playability. Having Cobra Commander, the Arctic version in this wave, and the Ice Viper, I think that's cool.
Yeah.
So good on them for that.
Hope they ship them together.
Yeah. So
much. Great.
So much for that Arctic concept everybody's been predicting every year for the last.
All right, and this here is I think the last one or the first one they would have posted after the last show, which is Tire Force Jinx with because of the extra head. Which this one here, isn't this pretty much almost a straight repaint from San Diego? Is there some tooling difference on it?
New head.
Just a new head. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Bobby, let me
I gotta say,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, John.
Go ahead, Fred. No, no, it's fine. Please.
I was just gonna say, you know,
No,
it's
you
gonna
can.
surprise people knowing my disdain for Tiger Force, but original Toys R Us Battle Cat release of this back, and I still dig it now. It's the Tiger Force paint job I like. So,
Bobby, I was going to ask you, in relation to the guys sculpting these. I don't know if you're aware. Four Horsemen are the ones that have been doing this stuff for the club for a few years. In your opinion, design-wise, don't you think these look a little tighter, a little better design than the previous offerings they've put up?
Yeah,
I'm not asking you to trash talk 4-H at all.
No, not at all. Yeah, I didn't know it was the Four Horsemen doing this stuff for them. I didn't know if it was Boss. Like, I actually didn't know who was doing the sculpting for them. It's like, you know, I'll do the inputs for the heads, but you know, then I don't see it until the
Right.
model. So I don't know who they're using, but yeah, you know, some of the previous heads, yeah, some detail was a little soft, and then these look a little better. But also that
Here's one of
contributes to how the tooling is cut over in Hong Kong. You know, you could have a head that's sculpted great, and it's like you might soften up a lot of details or get some shrink areas.
Hydra cap.
Yeah.
We talked about that the other day.
Yeah. But yeah, so it could be attributed to a lot of things. But no, these ones have definitely been looking really good lately.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
I think the watermark or the benchmark has been raised quite a bit with this batch of stuff. So I'm holding out hope that FSS 8 will have some more standout pieces in it, I'm sure. The overall appearance of the four new heads in here, all of them are, you know, pretty good. Especially by comparison, but they're pretty good in terms of matching Hasbro standard and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, because the club could have gone the quote-unquote lazy route, according to some people, and they could have just reused. They could have either just done it straight masked head only. They could have maybe San Diego head. I don't know if the actress likeness would have caused problems on that.
The Elodie Young head.
Yeah.
But I dig the fact that we're getting a short-haired Jinx head that is more the Jinx that most of us remember from G.I. Joe the movie.
That is the short hair. That's not like a ponytail, or
no, it looks to be a short haircut.
It looks like it's.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say without seeing the full turns in the digital.
I based her off the '87 movie.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, figured
Well,
so.
Nice.
That was the people were clamoring for her, but they were clamoring on the contingent of the unmasked '87 head.
Yeah.
If you caught any fan traction, you know, blah blah blah.
Or fans in traction. You know,
Well,
there's always
that too. It's always going both ways at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone, James, you might be able to fill me in on this. We were just talking about how you can't use the actor's likeness on any of the figures, but I want to say that didn't the club use the
they did.
Flint head, right?
Yeah.
Flint
Yeah.
head?
The skin tone was different, and it was a last-minute substitution, as far as I know.
That might have been within the realm of the contract for the movies.
Yeah, because that was the Eco Warriors Flint. They reused the head for that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Still love
the
it.
Dice is the producer from the Rise of Cobra movie.
Yeah.
Though I don't think they knew that. I don't think anybody really knew that.
Wait a
Bond
minute! Now I
Adventure?
got to go home and kick the crap out of Dice.
Yeah, it's
Are
it's
you
the
going to
Lamplight
drag
off.
us that old horse and beat that dead thing again?
Bobby and I did last
Oh, man.
time.
I was getting one of the guys that listens to the podcast actually reached out to me, so I've been talking with him, and he was like, "Man, the end of the show got really entertaining," and I had to like go back. I was also a few drinks in, but I went back and I listened to the show, and I was like, "Wow, we went on a pretty good rant there," but it was really entertaining.
It was awesome. It's Bobby Unplugged.
Here we go. This is when I was missing on the other page. This is
Oh.
a Budo.
Oh yeah.
Now, I want to let y'all talk about my
Oh.
2 cents on this. No offense, Bobby. I'm not a ninja guy. So this here will probably end up going to Dakota because he's in the ninja stuff. But y'all can go ahead and talk about this one. I know there was a lot of talk about the head. I think I've seen a vintage figure of it, but It was very brief. Is this anywhere near the vintage head sculpt?
It's similar.
This is actually off of the San Diego set head, isn't it?
No,
it's a new head.
Oh, the head's new.
Yeah.
The helmet is Comic-Con
Legend.
Legend.
That's what I'm
And
talking about. Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Head look way larger. I mean, it makes the helmet look larger, I think, than it's going to be.
no, the helmet's about that big.
Yeah, it's big.
Yeah, it's big.
Really?
I mean,
I dig
that
it,
style of armor helmet was big anyway, but
Sides.
yeah, well, to an extent, or my personal peccadillos with this figure. If you'll put it up again.
What's up?
Yeah, there
Mike,
you go,
you
Mike.
got a screen share.
Yeah, put it up again, Mike.
What, the Budo?
Yeah.
Is it not there?
Yeah.
Nope.
We don't want to look at John. We want to look at Budo.
Yeah. Anyway, my personal peccadillos are with that armor choice on the torso, or with the choice of those armored pieces anyway from the POC or from the Retaliation Budo. You're gonna have limitation in the shoulder movement due to the size of it. It's on purpose. It was designed that way to look realistic. But in this case, it's going to hinder the play value of the figure, which, I guess is going to adult collectors. That's a consideration you can let slide. But the chest armor has a wrap that holds the bottom of it down. And if you look, it's very artfully hidden by him drawing the sword across his body there where you almost don't notice it. But when you take the arm down, that passes across the middle of the midriff, which is a bad break in terms of how your eye flows down the figure visually. There's a couple of things you can do to adjust that. You can either change out that armor or you can add some other pieces to distract from it. But at this point in the process, I don't think that any of that's going to get done. So it leaves you with a very, very, very top-heavy looking figure. The skirt piece from Valor vs. Venom Slice with the hip armor would be a nice thing to throw on there instead of the tie that's around the waist right now. Visually, the way it flows down the figure. So, Bobby, I see you chomping at the bit. What do you want to say? Go ahead.
Oh, man, I sent Fred a text the other day because I was psyched for this figure to come out.
Mhm.
And I remember telling Fred, I'm like, he's going to be great. You're going to love him. You're going to love him. I had a lot of faith in it. And then he loved him, but everyone else hated him. And I was reading Hiss, which is obviously a big mistake. And the 10 guys that are actually on that site all hated it. I was like, man. I was like, can't you just like one good thing about it? And then I text Fred. I'm like, man, everyone's hating on the figure. He goes, yeah, it's just Hiss. Don't listen to it. But it's like I was really looking forward. Like this figure, particularly the '88 figure. I won't get into the story, but it as a child, I have a good childhood memory of this figure, so I couldn't wait to do this figure. And then it's like, it's like you spend the time and you want to do the figure awesome, and you're happy with what you put out there, and then all of a sudden people hate it, and you're like, well,
yeah, that hurts. That deflated your balloon, huh?
I was like, you know what? If people want to change the legs, change the legs. If people want to change the armor, change the armor.
Yeah,
I'm standing by the figure. People are like, oh, the helmet's too big. Well, go through the G.I. Joe library and tell me another helmet that would have worked better.
Yeah.
No, I think that helmet is the best choice out of anything that's available by far. Personally, I would have liked to see the canceled Walmart 2-pack Budo.
That's what everyone was talking about.
No, that's what I expected to see. I'm glad to see it wasn't. That's a little more creative.
Yeah,
but yeah.
So then, Bobby, let me ask you. Sorry, how do the legs hold the upper torso up? Customizing buddy of mine said that body, those, and nothing to the fault of the aesthetics. It's just the simple function of it that the top half is real heavy. I don't know. I'm horrible with parts.
When I pieced them together, I didn't find any issues. What John said, I noticed that. But as far as the figure, like, you're not going to sit there and get the figure and then he's going to fall over because he's top heavy. They have the little Celcon discs that are in the
friction disc
that hold, keep the figure tight. They're going to go through production to make sure that all the joints are tight, and if there's any looseness, they're gonna fine tune that. So I am pretty confident that no one's figure is gonna fall over because he's top heavy. I think the top heaviness is just an aesthetic thing, not a production thing. So.
Well, you know, it to your credit too. I mean, in terms of the figure design, if you look at the original Budo, he's top heavy looking. So you know that's not wrong.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would like to see altered on him, and it's not the figure, it's the accessories. And Bobby and I had talked about this, is that Budo was that kind of modern fusion between modern and traditional. And instead, I'm going to take the M4 that came with Scoop, because Scoop never came with an M4, so that he actually has a modern weapon with him as well.
You know, in a perfect world, there's the qualifier again. In a perfect world, you know, we could have everything. You know, we'd have POC level figures all the way across the board. And as I don't know about you guys, but for me, that's the standard of what G.I. Joe could be currently. But given budget restraints, given a limited tooling library that has a resource for parts, given all of that kind of stuff, you know, these are not bad. They're just not everything everybody individually wants them to be. I've faced the same discussion privately and publicly with people on our Western line saying, well, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I said, guys, just let us get our foot out the front door and walking, and then we'll talk about what you think it ought to be. But first, let us take our ideas, which you climbed on board on, and execute those first, you know.
You mean we can't review your figures before they come out? What?
When are you gonna add pirates?
No, I think
where are the aliens in my Cowboys and Aliens?
I think once we're done with the 100 or so Cowboys we want to do, and that's not an exaggeration. It's about 100 figures for the Western line. Once we're done with those, we're going to move on to Vikings. That's if nobody gets them before we do. So.
Well, getting back to Budo, I'm just going to say, I was when it was announced, I was like a lot of people. I was picturing that canceled Budo, which was a lot of the Retaliation comic pack Storm Shadow parts.
Actually, that was Temple Guardian Snake Eyes from.
Well, Temple Guardian, and then it was the Resolute Storm Shadow in that comic pack. But I dig him. I would not have thought of using that helmet personally because I always forget about that piece. No, I wouldn't either.
That was a nice surprise. Yeah.
And as soon as I saw it, I'm like, dude.
But like I said, it's a nice looking figure. I'm just not a ninja guy.
It's not your cup of tea.
You're right. It's not a cup of tea. I'm not saying it's not good looking and it won't come out good. But the point being is that it's just, like you said, not my cup of tea whatsoever.
You mean not your cup of Joe?
Not my cup of ninja.
Oh, my God.
But that is the whole entire. That is all of the.
Yes, I went there.
That is the whole lineup of FSS 7. They did put a hint out yesterday for number 13. Frank, you remember what it was? I can't remember.
It's a new figure.
Bobby knows.
It is what never had a figure before, and it's not part of any sub team, so no Tiger Force.
Damn it!
Skywarp.
But did I change it? Said Skywarp. That's going to lead us into a whole nother discussion.
Action Masters, G.I. Joe scale. Nice. Action Masters. Am I right?
I know he's not a Joe, but I'm thinking you look at that Comic-Con set and you look at Leoric, the Revolutionary set. You look at Leoric's head and you put that on a suit, which the club has now used 3 times. And I'm seeing Hector Ramirez. And, if he's not the 13th, damn it, I want Hector Ramirez. At some point, give him to me. The parts are there.
Cartoon loving lamers need to just fall off the edge of the flat earth, man.
Them's fat words there.
Hey, Hardtop is a little lonely too. I haven't seen Payload yet, so.
I'm hoping that the last I don't have any insights, so don't read it that way, but I'm hoping the last set is Star Brigade. I think there's probably 2 or 3 good astronaut bodies you could build out of parts out there with a minimum of new tooling, and would love to see them go out with a bunch of astronauts. That'd be great. Unusual, unique. Yeah. Screw DEF, man.
Oh yeah, they're also going to redo the Defiant, but that is one of the con exclusives.
Well, yeah, why not?
Oh,
Sure.
yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
So I could make a mortgage payment or two, or I could make a down payment on a Defiant.
There you go.
Nice.
All right. So what do y'all think? I mean, who do y'all think the 13th going to be? Who are you saying?
Let me say this first before we go to that discussion,
Okay.
if you don't mind. If the other twins' head is not the same size as the one that's already been released,
Oh,
Oh God,
people are going to lose their minds.
Hiss will explode.
Yeah. You talk about an avalanche of butthurt. That is going to generate the mother of all bombs.
That is the worst
Lose.
visual ever.
Either fix the
That's what we
bulbousness from the
call a
last one, or
mudslide.
you make them both and call it a night.
Yeah. There's a solution in there. Will it get done? Who knows? I hope so. And that's not coming from my personal point of view or not. I that twin is in a bag in my collection somewhere. But if they don't address that before they hit production, people are going to lose their minds. I'm not saying I'm going to lose my mind. I'm not going to lose my mind, but they're going to freak straight out.
Yeah.
Anyway, 13th figure speculation.
yeah. What do you think?
Shooter. Oh, wait.
Wait, already done.
God, I don't know.
Come on,
What do you
Team
guys
Ramirez.
Well, we know what Fred wants.
He's not a member of the Joe team, Dubob. Why don't you go shoot a video review for an action figure?
Whoa.
You know what? Hold on. We're going to do a Facebook Live of John right now. No.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Ouch.
Big bastard too.
Gosh, I don't know. It depends on the description. It says he's never been
Never had a
released.
release.
Does that mean he's never been released in 25th or never been released ever? Because if it's never been released ever, that's a pretty small window. If it's just never been released as a modern figure, well, that could be anybody.
So it's never. What is the exact verbiage? You can pretty much take them further for what they're saying. It's never in figure form.
Well,
right?
you can say that, but it wouldn't be the first time the club has played, fast and loose with so I don't know.
Let me see if I can find the description since my net connection is
Hey, Bobby, go ahead and type out the answer to me just so I'll know.
I personally think it's going to be.
Okay, not here's what they say. G.I. Joe team member, first character appearance, not part of a sub team.
Okay.
So you could
First
be talking
character
Cool
appearance.
Breeze, Mangler,
Mangler's the only one out of that particular little group of guys that wouldn't require
Easy
any tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you look at the 13th figures in previous years, they're minimal parts, minimal paint apps, minimal combinations,
Yeah.
as far as I can tell.
Well, I mean, to
Mangler is
look
pretty
at, Mangler would be straightforward.
in and out.
Cool Breeze would be a lot of brand new parts. And
Yeah.
to look at the group of guys that are coming up with these lists with
Yeah.
the club or from the club, Dave Lane and those guys, and does Dave strike you as the kind of person that's going to want a Cool Breeze figure? I mean, really?
You get a swim meal.
Hmm.
So yeah, there you go.
Nah, but Cool Breeze, I'm kind of with John on that. Cool Breeze his look is very unique.
Oh, it's a design nightmare. Are you kidding me?
And you can't repurpose that head for anyone else.
Well,
if you're going to go
could.
close to it, it's going to be hard.
You could, but you'd have to make the hat removable and stuff like that. And that's not currently something that they're doing. If you look at the track record of what they've done since 4-H took over sculpting, helmets are stuck on heads these days, and that's fine. I don't necessarily have to have a removable helmet, but
so let's look at the new heads that were already tooled for something else that they could reuse, and the two newest ones. And I keep saying Ramirez, but you've got the Leoric head that you could use for something, and you've got the Matt Tracker from Comic-Con also had a new head, if I remember correctly.
That Mad Tracker head sculpt was hot. You have anything to do
So-
with that, Bobby?
No.
That thing was hot. That was a great looking
Got-
sculpt. Lots of character.
You've got two heads that, in theory, could be repurposed. Now, Tracker, if they tooled a ball cap, could go into hardball eventually.
That's what I think.
I could see that.
Because that's, I mean, that head was just generic, and I mean, it was solid,
if
but
you-
it wasn't like so specialized that if you put a headpiece on it, you can get a different look out of it.
My only
I don't know if the-
my only fear is if they tried to do that, if the club tried to do that with a hardball, at some point in the future, that we would just get that ridiculous bad ball cap that comes on Shockwave stuck on his head.
That's what I'm betting it's going to be anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean,
Does that hat
if you
fit?
go into the Star Wars lineup, there was a Rebel Fleet Trooper that came out that had a soft cover on, had a baseball cap soft cover on.
Yeah.
That would be an excellent piece, but to this point, it hasn't been brought back up, re-released. It may be tied up in the Star Wars license, film image. I doubt something that mundane is, but who knows?
What was Shockwave's hat the same as was in that Rise of Cobra Desert set? Is that the same? Was that the same hat? I'm trying to remember.
Yes.
Yeah, that hat's been used about at least a half a dozen times, maybe more. So
Okay.
Two shockwaves and
Well, yeah, because the club used it for wide scope.
come on, Bobby, give us
repeater.
speculation.
man, wide scope.
Come on, buddy.
This is entertaining for me. Like, wow. All right. I can't say it.
It's going to be Brian Savage. I'm telling you now.
Nice.
I talked with Brian last year during the customizing class on Thursday. He came in the afternoon and kind of do a progress report, see how things went, how it was received. And most of the class had already emptied out because later on in the afternoon they cut and run to try to go get in line. But I talked with Brian, and I've got to follow up on it. But I want to put his head sculpt in our line. Now, I've already talked with Paul, and he's on board with it. So he might end up being a cowboy at some point soon.
Will he come with his
large
shorts?
old style bullhorn
No, actually, I
or
would.
a megaphone. Something.
If I had my druthers, and this is not a joke, this is in seriousness, I would put Brian on a Victorian era Undertaker. I think he'd look good in a top hat with the tails.
I'll actually like that.
I don't mean that as any disrespect or any joke at all. I'm serious. I think he would make a great looking his likeness for that particular character if you want to look at Western archetypes. So
and you'd sell the hell out of those coffin accessories.
yeah. Well, if
You really would.
you say that, it's one of those things where everybody says, and I'm sure that if the club guys were on here too, you could say, well, if you make this, you'll sell 100,000 of them. Well, no, actually, I won't. How many coffins do you really need in your play sets at home? 1, 2, maybe.
I'm morbid.
Yeah.
Just depends on who you want to kill off.
Well, it just you have to temper people's enthusiasm with what actually will work and what won't. During the first Kickstarter, I've talked with Fred and Mike about this before, and maybe even James. I was talking to them about how people were like, "Oh, you need to do horses, you need to do this, you need to do that." I'm like, given what budget we've got and what we're going to be working with and what we've projected, we have to get the basics done first before we can start stretching our wings and get on out there a little bit. And people were like, "Oh, you need to do Native Americans, you need to do Indians, you need to do this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy." That's a new tool. That's a new tool. That's a whole new figure. That's a whole new figure. That's a whole new figure. This is 30,000. That's 40,000. You start adding those numbers up, and it just becomes an avalanche of impossibilities.
They mean well, but
well, yeah, absolutely, sure, they mean well. The enthusiasm is catching most of the time.
Yeah,
but after a certain point, you just got to say, "Okay, guys, thanks, appreciate the input." Appreciate the input. We're going to go to work here.
Okay, Rick, Mike, James, what's your 13th thought?
I don't have a 13th thought. I have like 3 or 4 figures that I want before this is all over. Armadillo, I want him. I want.
Wah, wah.
I want. hey, we're talking about what I want, right? That's the
Touche.
hardball, definitely. I'm not going to make any fans on this. I want 2 Cobra Law guys to go with my Pythona.
Oh no, you make fans on that. You make friends.
Dude,
and
yes.
Nemesis Enforcer. And I want the payload. Payload's probably number 1 because I thought that the hardtop was really well done, and this was my year for the Defiant. So I'm close to it. I love those 2 characters. It's cool. So those are kind of the ones on my short list that I want.
I'd love to see a payload too. I'm right there with you, man. That's probably top of my list.
It's got to happen. They gave us the other guy. I mean, you think we would get
Hardtop. Well, like I said, there's 2 or 3 bodies that you can use out there to build a pretty good astronaut. The problem is the amount of tooling that's going to have to go under the helmet and collar to retain it. I mean, you could even get by using a pre-existing head. You know, Fred's Hector Ramirez wannabe head would make a pretty decent-looking payload head if it fits a particular torso.
It actually would.
Yeah.
It's going to be the helmet. It's going to be because really the only dome helmet that we've had
is that bad Ace one.
Harness. Yeah, and that's not great for payload.
No.
All right.
But they could surprise us.
I don't know. Let me put in a 13th guess. Never been done before. Member of the Joe team. I know it's a stretch, but the White Clown.
I'd like to see that actually.
Yeah.
Hey, if Ramirez isn't a member of the Joe team,
well, that's why I said it's a stretch.
Yeah.
He's an ally, whereas Ramirez is more of just a civilian.
Yeah.
I don't know if it applies to the club, but one of the underlying rules were all, as I was told, was when you mention guys like Hector Ramirez and maybe the Right Crown, I can cite a couple of instances, but others, if they weren't really fighting, they weren't. You had to think of what the accessories were. Then they weren't high on the list to be Joe. Okay, that was the argument for Billy.
Yeah.
What's Billy going to do? Come up to you with his scout uniform on, and which of course he gained ninjax,
Yeah.
Yeah, because realistically, if you go through, I mean, it would either have to be someone from the cartoon or the comic, and they've already done Sparks.
Kind of all there is they're the cartoon and the comic.
Yeah, but I mean, well, shut up, John. But I mean, they've already done out of the cartoon. They've already done Sparks. I can't, we've already had a general flag of sorts in one of the comic packs.
Yeah.
I don't see it being, was it Latimer? The guy
none of the jugglers or anything like that. I don't think there's no way to do that without significant tooling.
And, so then you go to the comic and you really have to look for characters that, sure, there are characters that have never had an appearance, never had a figure that could fit the bill, but man, the tooling for him would be a beast. I don't know.
That's why I'm calling Mangler.
Yeah, I think Mangler. I mean, you can argue that they could do one of the jugglers, one of the army officer types, using the coat from what's his name?
Worms.
Yeah, and the other guy
Worms
came with
Mayhem.
That wasn't. Yeah, General Mayhem. You could say that you could do it with that, but you really would be cobbling together the rest of the look of the figure in terms of the arms and the legs, and that jacket was designed to be big. So let's say you take it and you stuck it on the business suit body, that they're using for the twins. Just swap the jackets out to make your Army officer or your Navy officer or whatever. You're going to have this, the big suit piece bobbling around on a real skinny torso, and that just is not a look that's going to fly, really. I mean, so any of those guys, you're talking about tooling dollar bills. So anyway, all right, I killed the conversation.
Sorry.
You ruined it. No.
What I missed? I'm sorry, I had to step away for a second.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Our showrunner got bored and wandered off.
I had to go to the
I
bathroom so
think, John,
bad.
you wrapped it up is what you did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want me to fix it by telling you guys who it is?
Yes.
Dude,
I'm not gonna say no.
don't tease. Don't tease.
And that's when Bobby's connection drops, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We're going to move
Oh,
along now.
got some lag.
All right. We're going to move along. We've talked quite a bit about this now.
Excuse me.
But we're going. This is something that I heard from the grapevine. Rick actually tagged me on Twitter on it, and I didn't hear about it after Rick told me. But apparently, Arthur Siemendal, whatever how you say his name, he
Aubrey Sitterson.
Yeah, Sitterson. He
Are you John Travolta?
hey, hey, you, how you doing? But anyways, apparently, Scarlet Strike Force has been canceled before issue number 1 even hit the shelves. Is what it sounds like.
Well, canceled after issue 3.
Yeah,
So Scarlet, as I understand it, Scarlet Strike Force will hit the shelf. I don't know if the story is going to be tapered at the end of 3, but I think 1 and 3 are coming out. They're not.
Yeah.
Okay, as originally intended.
Yeah.
That's it.
The interview that he did, I don't remember where it was, but he had actually, they asked him about it, and he's like, yeah, unfortunately, we're not going to see the payoff to whatever they're building up to.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so we, number 1, I think I think it hasn't hit yet, and it's already done, because I think the sales numbers, Carson had posted some of them up on Facebook, and it was hitting that was it IDW tends to cancel books? Is it when they hit 5,000 a month? Right around there, and the book was that was all she wrote.
Well,
so
we have to, say we don't have to say, but we're going to say it. But I mean, you have to kind of think that maybe his comments a few months ago probably played a big part in the sales of this
without a doubt.
Yeah, it didn't help it. That's for sure. It sure didn't help.
It didn't help, and the book itself. Look, I when he first started writing, and before he'd opened his mouth and made controversial statements that a lot of folks, took a lot of issue with. I actually praised the first. I said the first issue was fun. It was more Sunbow than anything else. And it was weird, with the Transformers being. It felt like its own new thing versus continuing from what was there before. But as the book went on, it just got bizarre, and kind of like in the same way that G.I. Joe Transformers IDW book kind of got just kind of out there. And the readers, I honestly think that the book probably would have been headed toward cancellation had Sitterson not said what he said, just because it was just a weird book. It really felt less and less Joe and more, I don't know what the hell.
Yeah.
I haven't read anything in the last couple of years except for Hama's stories, so I don't, I can't have an informed opinion on that. But he certainly was incendiary in the remarks that he had, and I'm not. That's even trying to look at his point of view as a native New Yorker, somebody who was there when it went on. But what he said, the way he said it, whatever the reasoning or sentiment, was certainly not meant to make the situation calm down. It was meant to inflame. So
yeah.
And there was a lot, and even before that, there was a lot of almost poking the fan base with sticks. And it was that if you don't like me, it's that unfortunate societal tendency that we've seen from all ideologies right now, which is if you don't agree with me, you're wrong, and you're a somethingist. You're demonized because we don't have differences of opinion anymore. And he seemed just to ride that tide like it was a badge of honor. They put out the one cover with, was it Gung Ho and the Dreadnoks, and and they made a big deal. It was that it was a homoerotic cover. You were a homophobe or something like that. And honestly, I just thought the art was kind of crappy.
Yeah, that's what. I hate to interrupt you, but I'm a huge art guy. If I can't get past the art, I can't even read the book. And the art was kind of horrible.
So you're saying you're shallow and have a hard time with big words?
Yeah, pretty much.
Just pronouncing them.
So I've read all of them. I'm up to date with G.I.
Right.
Joe. I do a lot of comics. Period.
I'd love to hear your opinion on it.
So, and I'm collecting the Hama stuff, and that's cool. You know, I dig that stuff automatically. It's just been really good. Even the recent stuff, I'm really digging it. When I read that book, I kind of parallel Fred on, you know, first issue was kind of fun. Where is this going to go? Obviously hopeful, because you want to see the Joe fan base grow or just be out there in some way. You know, that's why we do the show too. So along about the fourth issue, my hopes started to kind of teeter. And, you know, it was
That's too bad.
It's really hard to see. It was kind of hard to see because, you know, the crown jewel and that whole thing, and there's nothing else out there. And here's the thing: when you start poking the bear, if the bear is your only audience, like this isn't a brand that's out there everywhere, and you can kind of just say, hey, we're not going to please these guys. No, you have to please these guys. These guys are all that's left currently. The only kids that are finding G.I. Joe are our kids. It's not out there. The brand can't take a writer who has so many opinions on social media. It's just the way it is right now. You know, it didn't matter what. So the book wasn't great, and then his opinions and things didn't help the situation, and it's just really unfortunate. There were some things that I liked in the book. You know, I try to always think of it. What are the things that I like? What are the things, you know, that I didn't like? And I'm a Transformers fan. I really dug like the rock and roll stuff, and there are certain things that I can say I liked about some of the issues, but all in all, it just didn't feel like Joe. I got to be honest too. I actually like the idea of Scarlet leading the team. I was all down for that. And some of the dialogue and some of the issues, I thought some of the dialogue was pretty good. With her and Joe Colton, I thought some of that was good. But all in all, it just ended up fizzling. Like the first issue was okay, it fizzled, and the connected universe stuff I think it's just too much. I'm familiar with all of it, Visionaries, ROM, all of that. Like, I'm down.
Obviously, look at his room.
It was too much even for me. I like what they're trying to do. I'm not a person that can't mix my G.I. Joe with someone else. Like Transformers or whatever it is, that if
Keep
the
your
story
chocolate
is good.
out of my peanut butter.
Yeah, I'm not. At first I was, and then I started to see like some things that I like. Like I thought Revolutionaries, the book Revolutionaries, I thought that was a good book.
That's cool.
So kudos on the Revolutionary stuff because I thought it was really good. It's just the other stuff just ended up fizzling for me. And to be honest, Hama's book is really good, and he's got such a history. We have such a history with it, you know. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Larry's stuff you almost have to put in a class by itself. You really do, because you know, like Larry's universe is Larry's universe, and Larry, you know, look, you can't even. No one can ever fully state the impact that he's had on this brand. He has touched so much of it and shaped so much, from file cards to, you know, input with Hasbro to the comic that he, you know, and IDW. I mean, I remember when IDW first got the license and you had Dixon's title, and it was a modern kind of spin on the team, but it was cool. And at the same time, you never had, you know, Chuck Dixon out there, like, you know, baiting the fandom, you know, and like almost taunting them. Like, you don't like my book, you're an idiot. And it's a shame.
Is that how you talk about people who don't like video reviews?
But it isn't. No, just
If you don't like video reviews, you're an idiot.
and you know, and at the same time, you know, here you have Larry's book, and okay, so Larry's book has taken a, you know, for some people, a controversial turn where, you know, they killed Snake Eyes.
Yep.
They brought back Snake Eyes in the form of Sean Collins. Then they brought back Snake Eyes again as Dawn and kind of shelved Sean. And yet at the same time, you know, Larry's book is, you know, regardless of what you think about that, Larry's book is always, there's always a little bit of anticipation for it each month.
Well, I
And a
think
clarification for the fans. Sorry, Sean is the body of Snake Eyes for all intents and purposes, and Dawn is the mind.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
the
I hope they're not done with Sean. I want him to stick around.
The thing I liked about what Larry did when he killed Snake Eyes, and a lot of people had a very adverse reaction to it, is that, you know, if anybody had the right to 86 that character, I absolutely think it was him.
Absolutely.
So, you know, wait and see where the story goes before you pass judgment. You know.
Well, since we've already spoiled, I'm sorry, but the way he even died was so fantastical in this world of realism, for lack of a better word. If I could see a bunch of ways where you could bring back the original Snake Eyes at some point.
Oh, don't be like all Marvel on us, man.
Well, we can be all Marvel on us in terms of Cobra Commander. He came back.
Only
Dr. Venom is
only
back
again. Only Uncle Ben stays dead.
Yeah.
You know,
Hey, I was going to say we got a question here in the chat. I can't pronounce his name. Sorry, you all know I'm horrible with names. But anyways,
John Smith.
it says, I hear Aubrey's defense saying that his provocations of a fan base were meant to challenge us, I suppose, on issues of racial or sexual gender preferences. Do you think there's anything to that? Did the Joe fan base need to be educated?
Yeah, Joe has led the charge on diversity since 1980, as far back as 1982, and within the context of Real American Hero. And I personally think that's an important point of contention. I think when you're discussing Sigma 6, this version of IDW versus the Marvel IDW, it's the Real American Hero, Snake Eyes, Scarlet, Destro, Cobra Commander type people. For starters, that's clearly been avoided in this conversation. And just so everybody knows, I've seen his comments. I have the screen captures and whatnot. What he's doing is he's deflecting the conversation, because he doesn't. In the moment you give him, since day one, the moment you've ever given him any sort of critique or comments or feedback, it's met with a brick wall. I mean, can you find people that probably said some very, inappropriate things? I'm sure. It's the internet with 7 billion people on it. You can find anybody to support whatever narrative you want to create. But was that, any sort of accurate portrayal of the fandom? No, it never was.
When that article,
show me the screen captures of the comments that there were. If I'm wrong, I'm certainly wrong.
Well, and James, to your point, remember that article that was posted on, was it the Mary Sue? And, the writer had done clearly, I'm sorry, next to no research about how, when you look at G.I. Joe, and, you look at let's go back to 82. So the very first roster, this core group of people, you had on a team as equals, a woman, you had someone of Hispanic descent. Yep. You had an African American who was all intents the second in command and one of the most badass dudes on the team.
Straight up, yeah.
You get into 83 and 84, and now you're introducing. Show me another toy line that had Native Americans as prominent, awesome team members.
Well, Fred,
he was. They're gonna immediately argue that he's stereotypical.
Yeah, I was gonna say to play devil's advocate.
Oh, Airborne.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course.
You could play devil's advocate with that if you want to. With both of those characters, you could do that with Stalker. I mean, given his background as a former, Detroit gang lord, why does Stalker have to be a gang lord? You can make that argument up and down both sides of it. The thing is that for the time, it was diverse. Was it an actual picture of currently serving, or at the time serving members of the military? Who knows? Who can say? I wasn't in the military. I can't tell you. Is it a picture of what we see today? No, it's not. But
but, and then John's no longer speaking.
Yeah, but if he lost,
he's talking away.
There's kind of all right. He can jump. I'll shut up the moment. Oh yeah, he is talking away.
He is.
Somebody,
Fred, make one of your drawings.
Ah, crap! I only saved those on my desk. Hang on.
There's a lot at this point in the conversation. There's a lot going on, as far as how to comment on it, because you're obviously the go-to is Salvo, and the change there versus the tone of the comic as a whole. and I'm just speaking the comic versus the notion of the integration of all the lines coming together. So to sit there and ask a blanket statement of what do you think was going on with the comic or the writer? Well, where do you begin?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think the easy one to tackle is, there's going to be an infusion of all the different properties. That's fine. How quickly and how directly do you implement, the different lines? That's up for debate. I mean, and a go-to example is where you just shoved a Decepticon in as the Joe member.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even gonna, that one never really bothered me personally on the surface. Obviously it's a requirement of the writer to articulate and move you forward in that direction, and that's certainly up for debate. But within the context of the story of just G.I. Joe, I mean, it's changed so rapidly since they've been with IDW since 2008. I mean, there's no consistent tone, and this certainly took it, the furthest away from previous understandings, which I do think is important. I don't think you can ever throw the baby out with the bathwater whenever you're dealing with a long-standing property. And I say that if you're going to keep it within the confines of the same story. Now, if they went off and did a zany subcomic like they're doing Revolutionaries, oh yeah, I think is what it's called. That's like a cartoony kid thing. But this is supposed to exist within the previous story that we've invested 8 or so years in, and then fallen off the deep end. As far as, and then to wrap, since I'm yammering to wrap it up, as far as Salvo goes, I could care less that there's a larger Samoan woman on the team. And she's, and I don't have a problem saying larger because she was designed to be larger. My sister has her doctorate in physical fitness, so my sister doesn't approve of the different body types comment within the notion of military, because the body types are there for their given purpose. And my sister delves in powerlifting, so yeah, that is more of a power lifter body, not run around rampant with bazookas and all that. Which only reason why I'm bringing it up is because that's been a part of the conversation as a whole in any points that I've read or seen online. The only thing that I will say personally is that I feel that gender and ethnicity are important parts of the character, and I would never take that away from any character, if you get my drift. I know that's kind of the biggest thing that's up to debate. I think gender swapping was kind of cool and had its charm in the early to mid aughts when it was new, but I personally think that it's a cheap go-to, and I think a writer that's, once you've hit the big books, Marvel, DC, IDW, Image, you can do something and get a much greater long-lasting impact than pull out the cheap parlor trick of the day.
Yeah.
Well, and another good point about that too is G.I. Joe has had such an incredibly large cast of characters that there's always room for more. And
yeah, absolutely.
So rather than take something that is, we always like to say every Joe is someone's favorite character. And there's somebody out there that, remembers Salvo from the Deke cartoon and from the comic book. And so when if you wanted to introduce, like James said, this just, Herculean, Samoan woman, hey, brand new character. And that's awesome, because now you've got a clean slate to tell a brand new story.
Yep.
Well,
I
again,
completely agree with that, Fred. And there's a lot of other brands that are doing the same thing. But new characters, like, I'm all over that. But the other thing I was going to say is, like, the other thing he did, the story itself. If you want to go to talk about like Real American Hero cartoon, they took like some of the zaniest stuff. I'm not talking about the Deke stuff, but before that, like the Fatal Fluffies and stuff like that. They took some of the zaniest stuff and kind of ran with it. And that, I mean, it really didn't go very far. I know it only got like 10 issues or something like that, but 10, you could build some serious. I've seen a good artist and a good storyteller. Like, you can put out a single issue and tell an amazing story. So, and they had ample chance. I just don't feel like they cut it. So.
Well, an interesting thing when you look at the idiot on a television show, the Kramers or the Phoebes of Friends and whatnot, more times than not, the actor actress is the most intelligent member of the cast. And I say that because you can throw in the zany. I'm not opposed to it, and apparently that was his conscious decision to do from the get-go. But you need to have the talent and the capabilities to use them effectively. Yeah. Beyond, and I love the reference. I love South Park for its social commentary. If you're familiar or heard of the member berries. And they basically, and it's a commentary on today's world where you can basically sit there and all of us can just go, remember Star Wars? Oh yeah, I remember Star Wars. I remember X-Wings and I remember TIE Fighters, and just have a conversation. Well, you're not really saying anything. You're just saying memories. You're just throwing out that cheap parlor trick of Army Ants or any of the other brands, which whatever, that's fine. I'm a showman of sorts. I can fire off the confetti gun every now and then,
Yeah.
But that's all it is at the end of the day.
Conversation to have at toy shows when I'm working a booth. Oh, I had that when I was a kid. Oh, that's awesome, great. I'm happy for you.
Yeah, I really don't know what to say beyond that. I mean, yeah, that's really cool, and I do appreciate their enthusiasm, and I can feel on it and feed off it as well, but. To go beyond that is what I think is essential for any sort of long running and deep impact that I think the writer wanted to have.
Excuse me.
So I'm going to take this back away from comics a bit and go back to figures, because I think that's where we always have the liveliest discussion here. And I was thinking about this. So, okay, 2018. This is going to be the last year for Fun Pub. This is going to, as we know it, running the Collectors Club. We're in theory going to have another FSS. We're going to have a convention set. What are 3 pieces that each of you would like to see the club do, given what we know of existing parts, blah, 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 fitting in the pattern? What are... If this is the end of Fun Pub working on Real American Hero, what are your 3 pieces to do before the lights shut out?
Finish Tiger Force.
Shut your tiger loving mouth. I kid.
I think we're only missing one Tiger Force figure for modern. I think it's just the UK
Roblox.
Tiger Force hit and run.
I was just gonna say, did I fall? Hit and run.
Yeah, buddy.
With or without microdot.
Finish Tiger Force, and I'll be happy.
What about the rest of you?
Fast draw. I've got a smoking build for fast draw. That absolutely fits within what they want to do, or what they've done in the past. So, will we see it? Who knows?
Oddly enough, I'd like to see Lightfoot. Don't know why. Just like Lightfoot.
I'm really hoping. I really hope we get a whole other box full of bats again. That's what I'm begging for.
I'm going to punch you in your tiger loving face.
And that's where we lost Mike, for folks. I don't know what happened. He was talking crazy. We had to put him down for his own.
We could get some Tiger Force bats.
What?
Tiger Force bats.
No.
I don't know what you're smoking up there.
So,
Jiminy.
Jesus.
And this
What's next, Mike? Tiger Force Cobra Law. It's not going to happen.
Hey, man, anything's possible.
Don't they have
Look, it's Tiger Force new for G.I. Joe. Tiger Force Pythona.
Ooh, Tiger Force tanks.
Wasn't there a national news story about how they have a huge meth problem up there in Arkansas right now?
Not in my
I
area.
think we're seeing the effects of it right here.
Hey, I got all my teeth. Okay. All my teeth are pearly white.
Are we all kind of in agreement that Hardball is probably coming at some point?
Yeah, I think so. Easily.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Payload.
We actually remember we discussed that once we got the payload.
Payload fast draw. And God, having a third one is just it's a little tough.
If we don't get payload, I think it will be a big fail on their part for not giving us that.
I totally agree.
Bobby, you have a hot sports opinion on that one?
Man, you guys are having so many conversations I can't get involved in.
No. I'm asking you as a fan, you as a historical fan of G.I. Joe, what 3 figures would you like to see done before this comes to an end, as it is?
This is all as a fan. This is not, you know.
No, that's. I want to qualify that for you. Yeah,
or anything like that. I'm a huge Cobra La fan, as much as I'm a Steel Brigade fan. So I would like, you need a Globulus. You have just about
do it.
And a Royal Guard would be right up there.
I think I would like to see a Royal Guard more than I would a Galabi.
I did say I forget who I was talking to. I think it was either Dave or Lanny, and I was like, "Hey, I don't know if you guys are tight with the boss fight guys, but they got a really good snake body."
Yes, they do.
But,
I don't see that in the cards.
Yeah, I don't see that either. But it was just more of a playful conversation because I've seen it online. But I don't know. I mean, I like what Fred said about Lightfoot because 88's my favorite year. So to kind of round out that year would be really nice.
88 is my favorite year too. That was just an outstanding assortment of characters. Yeah.
I don't know if there's really anyone else I can think of that I'd say, they missed. They got a lot of good ones for this. For 7, that like Crystal Ball, it's like that was a no-brainer.
Hell yeah.
Budo, Hardtop, a lot of that stuff's a no-brainer. It's like I was trying to look the other day and see what out of the vintage line they haven't done yet. And I'm talking like vintage up until like 92, because then in 93, 94 you get like ridiculous.
Yeah, 93 there was over 100 figures alone.
So if you just went to like 91, 92 and see what they're getting out, there's not much left. Thankfully, I was able to get you guys a 91 General Hawk. But
can I make a suggestion on that figure?
Sure.
Swap that helmet for the one from 30th Anniversary Ace.
He's got the big breather nozzle that comes off it, though.
It's okay. Maybe he needs it.
Maybe
he needs it. Go ahead.
No, I'm going to say James here of FS8. I guess ideas what he was saying here. 13 win, the rest fade away. I guess these are, what do you think in the 13 that we should get an 8? What you're saying, James? Hello?
James is asleep.
Kavanaugh, where'd he go?
His mic might have dropped. Mine did a while ago.
Oh,
bag. So
it's a pretty extensive list.
Can you hear me or not?
Yeah, I hear you now, James.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, that was just I just went through all the images of all the file cards. I at least pulled out. I know there's nothing's perfect, but characters that we haven't seen yet in 4-inch form, and that's my personal focus on all of this. Nothing against any of the core characters or whatever that have been done here. And actually, I guess to Bobby's credit, then General Hawk and a few others, there was comments made that outside sources must have helped put those on them to make them look as good as they were. But that was just a list of characters that we have not seen in any capacity.
There's some that we've mentioned already. Hardballs in that picture, Galarcus.
What language are you speaking?
It's Arkansas.
Arkansas.
He's from Galarcus.
I can tell you right now, you're never ever gonna see an 87 Gung Ho.
You don't think so?
Well, because the Marines own the rights to the likeness of their uniform. So if you were to do that figure, you would have to pay the Marines to do that figure. No one's going to pay the Marines because they're probably not looking for your standard, couple percent. They're probably going to look for a 60% on a figure, which is going to be outrageous. But
Wow.
so you're never going to see that figure. I can safely say you're never going to see that figure.
Well,
Just
that's where guys like me come in.
Well, now I am glad that Bobby's on the call, because I've always thought that Cobra Law would be perfect for SDCC. Hint, hint, wink, wink.
You know, I've seen several customs done using the Bobby. I want to fly this at you specifically. I've seen several customs of the Royal Guard done using the Dark World Dark Elf figure.
Yeah.
If the club was to, and this is a giant if, and I know you can't answer for the club, but if they were to see to Hasbro, we would like to use that figure to do a couple of Royal Guards in our FSS. Is that something that's going to have to go through licensing hoops because it's from a movie line, or is that something that's just, is that something that's a possibility?
Yeah, we probably would never even. We'd probably just say no right off the bat, just because anything to do with a Marvel movie is theirs and they own it, and they're understandably they're not going to let a.
No, I wouldn't think they would. That's something I've wondered about for a long time, and I wondered what the answer would be.
Yeah, when it comes to
hypothetically given answer.
Yeah, when it comes to theatrical stuff like that, there's no getting around it. But as far as existing tooling, like Marvel Classic existing tooling, that's a different story. I mean, if you think about it. Professor X, I forget if it was Professor X first or if it was Comic-Con Cobra Commander first, but that that figure was a G.I. Joe figure, then a Marvel figure, then a G.I. Joe figure, then a Marvel figure.
You're talking about the Cobra Commander suit and podium?
Yeah.
Oh, that was
no, he's talking about the
Jones.
He's talking about the Destro. No, he's talking about the Destro Comic-Con figure that used the body of.
Yeah, that's right.
The Tomex and Zaymot are using.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
No, the one he mentioned there was the one taught from the Indiana Jones line.
Yeah, it was from there. Yeah, thanks for.
I'm surprised that one got past everybody. I don't mean us as a group. I just mean that one made it past, from a movie line to a regular toy line release.
I think it was easy because there wasn't really anything super recognizable. I mean, he was just wearing a suit, so I think they really only used his most of the parts, but then Professor X had the new jacket with the vest that got tooled up. But yeah, over time, the other thing that's always an issue is where the specific tools are located at which vendor. So if you want to use a specific part and it's at a different vendor, you won't be able to use that part because you can't access the tools. So it's really only based on the library you have available.
Yeah. I know that's like I talked about earlier. That's one of the limiting factors when it comes to the club's decision-making process.
Yeah.
Like we were talking earlier about baseball caps and James's list that Mike had up a minute ago. I just thought of another. If they were to tool a new ball cap, if there's another figure on that list that could use it, that wouldn't be too hard to build with existing parts.
Oh, speak up.
Hello?
Steamroller?
Do you hear me?
Yeah, steamroller could work.
Oh, yeah.
Ball cap,
I don't
bare
know
chest.
that in my life, though.
Damn it, John.
He's not on my list anywhere near the top.
Not having the steamroller?
No. Well,
He'd be in the 2-pack with Rick's armadillo.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
There's
maybe they'll do a contest and we'll win it, John, and we can get our 2-pack.
as a collector, by and large, the drivers were lesser than the mainline guys, both in terms of characterization and overall design, for the most part. That doesn't include guys like Ace, Payload, Hardtop, those kind of things where Keel Hall is another good example where the characters really showed through the design of the figure, things like that. But as the line went on, like say Updraft is a good example. I know who it is as a big time fan. I know who it is, but most other people aren't going to necessarily get who that is, where he came from, what he was, and is the design that you would have to make even accurate, to what the vintage design was. So, the drivers are cool and all, but I would rather see the focus on the mainline characters while there's still time, if it's possible.
When I was making that list, I thought Recoil was already made.
Oops.
But he was
Yeah.
not.
How they missed him, I'm kind of surprised at. You know, there's a lot of good ones on that list. I'm just mentally like, I'm looking at my phone because you texted to me. I'm just like going through it mentally, like, okay, how much tooling would it be to create Hydro Viper? Because that's one of the like everything. But then I'm looking at the list.
Hydro Viper, a new head. I built a custom one that it's my figure and I love it, but it's outstanding.
Man.
Huh?
They were going to give us Hydro Viper an O-ring.
I used Emperor Palpatine's left hand and webbed it myself. It's a new sculpt piece.
Gotcha.
You'd be looking at a left hand and a head.
And a head, yeah.
Yeah. Everything else is pre-existing that I did anyway. There's if you wanted to base it on something that didn't get released to get something else out there, you could do that 3-time canceled torpedoes / eels that was going to come with the raft. Because all of the gear on that's new. The right forearm and the lower legs are all new.
Yeah,
I know it's tooled.
Oh, it's tooled, all right.
I know it's tooled.
Mike, I tell you, like, looking at this list, I can tell you right now who you would never want to do. And that's Downtown.
No, the helmet.
The sheer number of parts, you know.
Yeah.
What was that?
The sheer number of parts. I mean, it would be. You definitely have to substitute some pre-existing stuff for his gear, and then come up short, you know, with the fan guys. Right. You know, because he had eight mortar rounds on the back of his backpack. Was it 8 or 10?
Yeah.
It's been so long since I dug him out and looked at
8.
it.
Yeah, he would not be anywhere near an accurate representation of his vintage counterpart, even parts wise or accessory wise.
Yeah. You know, I know.
And also looking at.
I know why Recoil hasn't been done. It's that stupid chicken
helmet?
factory bump cap that he wears.
Look, Devo was not touring at the time, and he needed a second gig.
That helmet design in the vintage line is reprehensible. Somebody should have had the bad taste smacked right out of their mouth for that one.
Do you think if we got rapid fire, they could put a VHS cassette with him?
Oh,
That'd be awesome.
I did something cool with Listen and Fun Tripwire that I made. You know, it was an audio cassette figure, like the video cassette figure that Rapid Fire is. I took the mini cassette from the Soundwave backpack, cast it in yellow, and he holds it in his hand.
Ah,
So
Nice.
something like that with a small accessory, have him holding a videotape in his offhand, armor stuff.
I was trying to
for
put
rapid.
Listen and Fun Tripwire.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I was gonna say
Easy.
for rapid fire, you go the route that Target did with the Stranger Things DVD set, where they did it in a VHS shaped package.
Yeah.
So his box looks like a VHS tape.
Yeah.
That would be
Now there's a Comic-Con. Well, maybe I don't know.
I don't
There's
know.
a Fred.
I
That's
don't-
a Fred Comic-Con piece. No
I don't
one
know.
else would want it.
I don't think that figure has the cachet to drive SD
No.
cells.
No.
No.
Hey, I got a
You know-
text message from a buddy of mine who's watching the show. Fred, he wants to know what the hell is that behind you.
This is what's left of my office as
The
we're
mannequin?
moving to the basement, and that is a giant wrestling figure that looks like one of our creative directors, and we have
The skeleton.
the skeleton's on that side. Yeah, there's a lot of crap in this office.
It looks like the
Sorry, because that's the former Just Another G.I. Joe co-host, R.I.P.
Yeah, it's one of the ones we bored to death.
It reminds me of those old B movies, like the Full Moon used to put out. I think it was like Puppet
yeah.
Master and all those things.
Yeah.
I've got a question for Bobby, and I guess for the group as a whole. Why do you think we haven't seen an Ultimate Duke? There's a great pool of parts from POC on up where you could make a very accurate, very cool looking updated Duke, which was
Badass.
terribly dated in the 25th line. Equally as bad as say Roblox or something, but why do you think we haven't seen one yet?
Trying to think if I can answer this question.
Well, if you can't, don't try to finagle it. I don't want to get you in any trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you could probably judge by me not being able to answer the question.
So you're saying SDCC next year will probably Duke. Yeah.
I have to admit, I would go nuts for an updated classic Duke using that Pursuit of Cobra head that he had. And I mean, that would be amazing.
What if
I think that's one of those things that hasn't been addressed in some of the other re-releases, and it is a core character. I was wondering how come it hadn't gotten to that point. Now, I realize whatever you might say or might not say is only speculation. So I don't want to paint you in a corner. I hope you didn't take it that way. But yeah.
It was being addressed for reasons I can't get into. It was not put in somewhere, but it was being addressed.
Oh, so it was something that was being approached, but is now off the table.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who knows? If Joe starts back up, things get serious. Maybe we'll see him out there.
Now, when Weber first made his appearance publicly as an ambassador for the Joe brand, we talked about some of the characters that were remaining in the concept cases and things like that, and what Joe might go doing for what Joe might be going forward. And from him and from other people associated with the brand or formerly associated with the brand, they all indicated that when Joe goes forward into its next iteration, which is what it's going to have to do, the format would stay the same. So
Hey, John, we're losing you, man.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. Is that on my end or
Your end.
A lot of static on your end, buddy.
Crap, I was looking forward to that question.
He's
It was censored by the FCC.
It's because I was complaining about your video reviews.
Oh!
I forget what I was saying now. This is a terrible thing that happens when you get older. You get brain farts.
You started saying how Weber about the concept case stuff.
Oh yeah. From that resource and from other resources, everything that I've heard is when Joe goes forward in its next iteration, that the format won't change. It'll still be about a 4-inch tall figure. It'll still be highly articulated like we've come to expect. You want to? Any of you guys want to speculate on that, or either confirm or deny if you've got any input?
I mean, I can say whether it would or it wouldn't, just because I'm on Marvel now. I'm not really on Joe. I would like to think that with guys like Daryl being on the brand, that if and when Joe starts back up again, I can't see it breaking format. I'm one of those guys that are with everyone else that want to see a 6-inch line one day. I think that would be amazing. But I don't know if they would go just 6-inch and no 3 3/4 or 3 3/4 and 6-inch or just 3 3/4. But it'd be hard to walk away from 3 3/4 because it's a staple of the line. If you look at Marvel and how 3 3/4 started to go away and 6-inch is so popular, and at a time 3 3/4 was super popular for Marvel, but at the time there was no 6-inch available. So
right,
it's okay, but Marvel to me was always a 6-inch line, so that's what kind of won out. But at the end of the day, G.I. Joe is a 3 3/4 / 4 1/4 inch line. And I think it may always stay that way. I could be totally wrong, but it's my scale. I love that scale, so I'd like to see it.
I hear you. Yeah.
I know we discussed this on Galactic Gumbo. We talked about 6-inch G.I. Joes, and there are a lot of people I know who don't collect G.I. Joe, but they collect 6-inch figures. And they were like, if you gave me some 6-inch, troop builders Duke, Snake Eyes, Scarlet, Cobra, Destro. He's like, you know, I'd be told because he collects the 6-inch Star Wars, and when he troop fields, he gets 3 of each. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So he gets 3 of each stormtrooper, each variation they put out.
That's what they saw with because you had Marvel Legends, which was, you know, they paved the way for 6-inch lines. And then when Star Wars went that route, you had your Star Wars fans, but also you had Marvel Legends fans that were fans of 6-inch that said, "Oh, wait a second, I could put a Boba Fett on my Wolverine," and it's like, "Oh wow," you know. Then you kind of got that you know, that overflow of people. And I think the same thing would happen with Joe. You'd get Joe fans, but also that same person that wants Boba Fett and Wolverine to stand next to each other definitely wants the guy standing with them. So
I mean, I'm just talking as a fan. I mean, and I know Rick will agree with me 100% on this, is that I mean,
the whole show, all 5 of us, and some folks are casuals, but we hardly agree on anything. All 5 of us agreed that it would be a good idea and that we would definitely put our money where the mouths are.
Excuse me, sorry.
I'm with John on this.
I mean, Grant.
No. Let me rephrase it. There might have been a miscommunication. Stick with 3 3/4. That's what brought you to the game.
You lose the vehicles almost completely.
Let me rephrase
vehicles now anyway.
Let me rephrase it just for a second because you guys, I know you didn't see the show. We are the 3 3/4. We want it. Everybody loves that. You're not going to ever leave that. My opinion is Joe will never leave that scale. In addition to that scale, you can bring in some of the casual fans that used to watch the cartoon, that used to read the comic book, that used to play with the toys.
Retail support to support 2 lines. A 6-inch for the fans that you said.
It probably
3 3/4, 4-inch for the guys that are buying already.
It would depend on the fiction because everything hinges on the fiction. If the fiction was good enough and if the story was there, if Joe was rebranded, not Joe as it exists.
You can't base a financial decision on if. I realize the 6-inch figures are more profitable by far for Hasbro for the tooling dollars that they spend on that. And that's a major driving decision behind it.
Let's go back to Black Series for a second because I love this conversation. It's a good conversation. You've got companies. First of all, there are certain fans that associate that 6-inch with the higher end collectible. Look at how Black Series was presented. First of all, it's called Black Series. It comes in a black box, right? There are certain things that it's letting them compete with the figure arts people and and even the 1/6 community to a certain extent. I collect Marvel Legends. Some of the Marvel Legends figures are just ridiculous. I look at like Hobgoblin, Green Goblin. There's a bunch from this past like 2 years that are just ridiculous, amazing figures. That Wolverine. It lets them compete. It brings in some of these fans that just don't want to collect the 3 3/4, and it lets the brand kind of continue with some new folks who haven't been in it from the beginning or even picked back in. It can't happen right now, right? It can't happen right now.
However you like, but I think it's been proven over and over and over again at retail that you can't support 2 lines on the same property in 2 different scales at the same time.
So the
money's just not there.
Absolutely. So the second part of the conversation on our show was all about doing a sub or doing it like Super 7 is doing MOTU or whatever.
I don't see Hasbro making those decisions like that. I mean, I'm not corporate. I can't speak to them, but I don't see them historically doing stuff like that.
It may, you know, let's say it went to Disney or something like. It may take it going to a bigger place for it to happen.
I don't see Disney doing Joe simply because it's a military. It was a historically military-based line. It's kind of like Lego and Joe. You know, Lego won't do military properties.
Yeah, I mean, John's absolutely right. You know, if you'd have to get the Joe popularity of like 2008, 2009, for there to be expansion in that sense, because you also have to think starting a 6-inch line. It's not like you're just gonna start a 6-inch line. That the amount of tooling to start a 6-inch line. Say you did a wave of 3 or 4 figures to start off with. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of tooling because you don't have a library. Marvel, it's easy to do figures because you have a library established. Same thing with Star Wars, even though it's a lot of new tooling. But to do it to do 6-inch Joe is an incredible amount of financial, yeah. So
yeah,
it'd be there. Like when I say every star would have to align, I mean every star would have to align. I know people want it. People know people want it. It's not as easy to do as people think. Like, why don't they just do a 6-inch line? It's not that.
Well, we're all dreamers. We all want different things. I mean,
Yeah,
I want 3 3/4. I would love. I mean, as a fan, I mean, as I don't collect Star Wars. Star Wars brought me in because of the card art they did for the anniversary special. But I mean, it was, we talked about it on there. Fans can always dream what they want, and I think me and Rick, of course, we're on the same page on that. That's just our 2 cents as fans, where we know people who are not into G.I. Joe like we are, who would be in G.I. Joe if it was a 6-inch line. Granted, like you said, there are, I'm sure, 1,001 loopholes and financial obligations to have to go through in order to make that happen. And we're not down that whatsoever.
And whatever scale Joe, when next time Joe comes back, honestly, and I think a lot of collectors lose sight of this, it has to be something that is going to appeal to kids.
Yeah.
Because that's how you're going to grow the brand.
Yeah, there's not enough collectors. There's not enough collectors. Don't get me wrong. Like we are a loyal fan base, but how many of us do you think there actually are?
Not as many as anyone thinks.
Not enough to run an entire line.
Yeah.
That's why the Collector Club is doing it. Collector Club is doing collector-based stuff, but at the end of the day, you need to make toys for kids. It's a 4+ age grade on that package, and it needs to appeal to both audiences. Yes, Marvel Legends and Star Wars Black Series is super popular, but why? Because their kid line sells so well. Also, you can't survive on just the collector line. You just can't do it.
You know what killed it for G.I. Joe was Sigma 6. Damn it.
2 things. I'll go on the record right now saying if the scale changes, I'm out. I'm done. I have 10,000 figures that are in the 4-inch scale. I don't need another size.
Well, let me ask you this. If they still theoretically, just pure theoretically, we know 6 inches will probably not happen, but if they still gave you the 3 3/4 and gave you a 6-inch choice, you still would. Right, you don't have to, but you can still do your 3 3/4.
No, I'm saying I don't think Hasbro can do both now.
No, you're right, but if they, I'm saying in a perfect world, if they did,
perfect world arguments are so far out there.
I know.
Well, it's like one of those weird things. Like, so 4 years ago, I didn't think that I would see another company pick up Masters of the Universe, and that we would be getting like this Filmation line fleshed out after we already have almost a complete regular classics redo. I didn't think that would ever happen. There's things that I didn't think would ever happen that happen all the time. So, it's a fun conversation.
Point of interest, they don't have the access to the tooling next year.
Nope.
So that's already, As much as I would have agreed with your comment 3 days ago, before the announcement. Right.
Yeah. And looking back at Sigma 6, I mean, Sigma 6, okay, I'm going to say it right now, and I hell, I own Sigma 6 Central, which even though I did not hardly any, I just did back end work on it. Justin did all the heavy lifting. Sigma 6's cartoon and its media tie-in was for crap. But those figures were amazing in their design and their accessories, and the fact that the packaging, the top and bottom, became like accessory crate for the parts. And yet, even in spite of that, as a collector, I own like 10 because it was just too different from what I already owned. I think it was Bobby or somebody was saying earlier about how people who collected they wanted Boba Fett and Snake Eyes and Wolverine all together, and that's why I went apeshit when Hasbro introduced the Marvel Universe line. 3 3/4 Marvel was my dream because I already had some Star Wars. I had my Joe, and then suddenly, holy crap, I was getting Marvel characters, and I have Cable and Deadpool in, 1/18 scale, and that was a dream come true for me as a collector. But I don't know. I will still argue that Sigma 6 was a good line, and it actually was targeted to kids, right down to those blinking lights that they put in the package.
Yeah.
Which, if you talk to Neil Hoffman, those were put in there solely to grab your attention, and they worked.
Two things real quick. Back to Bobby's comment about how many fans do you think there are? Based on my experience as a vendor at the con, I'm going to guess somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3,500 to 5,000 nationwide. Because you got the same 20% of that, the same 1,000 people showing up at JoeCon every year.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's not a big enough number to support a national brand.
No, G.I. Joe needs to be out there a lot more before they start attracting people. It's not going to happen until something's out there that's good.
They're going to think the next movie.
They're hinging it on the movie, but there's nothing that makes me believe that Paramount is suddenly going to put out this amazing media. There's nothing.
Michael Bay Transformers, cough, cough.
I would agree with John. Well, yeah, I was just going to say, my understanding is anybody that's going to be on our level of G.I. Joe is right around John's numbers. Anybody that Hasbro is going to want to remotely, hopefully get and grab, that's going to grab one here or there. I've estimated it as high as 13,000, as low as 8,000 worldwide. Though
it's not a big number. It's not nearly as big a number as people like to think it is. And like I said, if you look every year at the people who make that trip to con and are willing to spend the money to make that trip to con, it's the same about 1,000 to 1,200 people every year. The crowds are bigger than that because you have walk-ins and vacations.
Wives and kids. Yeah.
The other comment I wanted to make is you mentioned Neil Hoffman and Sigma 6. Back in 2007 at the convention, I did a set of 6 Sigma 6 figures in 3 3/4 scale, and that's actually how I got introduced to Neil. He left his business card under my stuff, and we got to talk a little bit after the fact. And I asked him, what interested him in what I did, and he said, "Well, that's because and this is from him. This is paraphrasing what he told me. He said, because I personally put the nails in the coffin saying Sigma 6 wouldn't work in 3.75 scale, and yet here's 6 figures that you did of pre-existing parts that work great." So
I would kill.
I just want that's just a little aside. It's not meant to be anything or sound like that, but just something interesting. The Sigma 6 as a concept was good. The toys were rugged, man. You could beat them up. Fred's absolutely right. Design wise, they were amazing, but not my cup of tea. I mean, I have some, but they're not the focus of my line or my collecting. So
my fiance's 1 3/4 nephew got a hold of one of my Dukes, and he beat the living crap out of that figure.
Yeah.
And do you know how many parts broke on that figure? The accessories were all over the place.
Yeah.
That figure held up.
Yeah.
And you could, and I remember when we had Kirk Bazigian on here, and he was even saying, technically a 4-inch figure is harder for little kids because of their hands. A little bit bigger figure is better for smaller hands.
Yeah.
And, maybe Sigma 6 was a little too tall, but at the same time, they were built with kids in mind. And
absolutely. Yeah. Right.
And it was, look, it was, there were, the fandom had a whole problem with it because it was changing scale, it was a changing tone, it was a different aesthetic, but at the same time,
well, it was directed at kids. I mean,
but those toys,
the bug-eating tunnel rat, the goofy faces, the anime influences, everything that was kid
popular at the time.
That was absolutely their attempt to reinvent the brand.
Yeah, kids were playing with Digimon and Pokemon, and a lot of that was big. And it's like when Kirk talked about it JoeCon years ago, and someone's like, well, why Star Brigade? And God, I love listening to Kirk because Kirk's like a strategy ninja. Especially working in an ad agency, I love hearing him talk about that. And he said, because they got wind that Kenner was thinking of bringing back Star Wars, And so Star Brigade, they headed it off at the pass and took G.I. Joe into space. And boom. You know, and John's right. Some of those designs are pretty badass.
Yeah.
I still like my Star Brigade Roadblock. I would take an updated version of him in a heartbeat. It's not going to happen, but I want one.
One of the first things I customized when I did my astronaut body a couple of years back was Roadblock. I mean, that thing is awesome.
He just looks, with that gun, he is, man, that figure is awesome. But
Who is it?
So-
Heavy
so,
duty
you know-
that had the Viking helmet?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Star Brigade Tech heavy duty with the Viking helmet and rock and roll with the smooth faceplate. Robo Joe.
Robo.
Robo Joe.
you know, I would even buy if somebody could do a good update of Robo Joe.
Somebody
What the
already
hell?
has, pal.
Okay, I did a good one.
I own it. Oh,
No, but you know what I mean. I mean a mass market version. I would buy a
It's an
mass
official
market.
release.
I would absolutely buy it at retail. Hell, I want my 118th adventure team completed, but that's never going to happen.
You got a Mike Power sitting over here, pal. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and yours is damn sexy. I'm sorry, that figure's amazing.
Excuse me.
Lust over that thing,
Mm.
and Bullet Man too. I take them, you know.
Anyway.
All right.
You know, you're talking about having a certain set of heroes playing with each other, Bobby. You know, your Snake Eyes, your Wolverine, all that. Well, I've got that now. I have Snake Eyes in 4-inch scale, a great one. You know, POC version, whatever, 3. That's the ultimate Snake Eyes. I've got obviously several Wolverines to choose from in the MU line.
Yeah.
I've got my Rom, because Rom's got to be in there.
Love me some Rom.
You know, all that exists already.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Sorry for the coughing, guys. I apologize.
All right. Well, I think we're going to call it a show.
Mike's
Going-
done.
For y'all who don't know, I actually took on a second job. I actually got to be at work at 10 o'clock tonight. And
Oh
work
shit,
overnight.
dude!
yikes.
Yeah,
So,
holidays.
working over at Whataburger, Mike?
No,
Yeah, you working Whataburger overnights?
yeah, I'm eating all the burgers.
No, dude, it's ladies' night tonight. He's got to be on stage at like 10.
Oh,
Right, I'm the original Michael.
How do you survive on 50 cents a night, bud?
he's got the Tiger Force thong going on.
Hey man,
Oh.
you have no ideas.
Oh,
Mike's way more sophisticated than a thong.
He goes
Hey.
by Tiger Gumbo.
All right.
But I do want to throw this out real quick. While we were talking earlier, I looked up the episodes. In this past year, our #1 episode was viewed 839 times.
Awesome.
That was the JoeCon edition that I did at JoeCon. The second episode highest was episode #1, which was 691, and about half of that stopped watching after the first one. So take that for what it is.
I got 10 minutes in, and I was like, I'm out.
Yeah, pretty much is how it is. And then the third highest episode was 485, and that was episode 14 with Kurt, which was that Saturday morning edition show we did.
oh yeah, that's a great show.
So we appreciate everyone who's come on over the year. All the guests we've had, the cosplay, the Kickstarter guys.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody who's come on, I really appreciate them taking the time to come out to the show and hang out with us. Even Bobby from Hasbro. I can't believe they still let him have a computer. I'm sure they haven't
He's
sent an
coming
email
back
like,
voluntarily.
I know. I'm surprised he hasn't got an email. They're like, shut the hell up. Stop talking to those guys. What's wrong with you?
Do you know? Yeah. Do you know these guys? Yeah.
Like, what the hell's wrong with you, man? They're like, block them. So,
My wife got tired of me trying to talk Joe with her. I'm like, man, I need
Eh.
something. to talk
Let
But,
me remind everyone of something real quick. You know, I know that the brochure is not up yet or anything like that. But if you guys want to meet Bobby face to face, he's going to be helping out with the customizing class this year as an official representative from the H-Bro.
Nice.
oh, really?
Enroll in the class, come out and see the man.
I wasn't going to say
I'm just gonna come. I'm just gonna come hang
I'll go ahead
out.
and out you right now.
I'm just gonna come hang out.
I'm
That's what I
excited
want to
about
do.
it. I think it's going to add a big bang to the class. People are going to get a chance to come in and talk to somebody.
Well, that's good news. Actually, I'm glad to hear that. I didn't do last year's customizing class, but I did do the Bullet Man one. I really enjoyed it, but And then I came back last year to have you paint some eyebrows on my eyebrowless blocker.
Didn't Kalen do that for you?
Yeah, you had someone else do it for me. But I mean, the poor bastard looked like he had chemotherapy session or something. He had no eyebrows. I'm like,
He was
come on.
playing with firecrackers. He's doing a PSA. Don't hold them here when they go off.
It was horrible. I mean, I was so upset when I saw that. If you've never done the customizing class, definitely look into it when the brochure goes in January. It is a very eventful class. I've done both Transformers and G.I. Joe, and even though Transformers is a little bit more easier, but you get more knowledge and more hands-on in the G.I. Joe than you will in Transformers, in my opinion.
You're not going to find a better group of people to come in there and have the class with, because most of the time the class is full of people who customize all the time anyway. So if there's a question, you're going to be able to get an answer to it.
And if your figure comes with no eyebrows, make sure you take it to John. He'll help you out on that one.
I'll go ahead and I'll give you this hint. There are no eyebrows.
What?
I said I'll go ahead and give you this hint. There are no eyebrows.
Uh-oh.
Don't tell us. Don't tell us.
Mike, your custom bat class will be happening this year.
Hey,
There you go.
if the custom
no
bat
bat.
class, well, I'll
I'm
be all over that.
not an army builder of the bats. Nope.
No eyebrows on the bats.
Brow bat. I can see it now.
I'll testify and say that, I mean, customizing is hands down my weakest part of the G.I. Joe collecting experience. And I always attend the custom event. I love it.
Yeah,
I mean, John's great, and John's
it's
absolutely
always
right.
interesting to see exactly what state James is going to stumble in the class.
Well,
One of the
That's,
things I look forward to the most.
well, all right. I'm glad you're having fun.
but anyways, we will have our next episode. Man, it's either going to be. Let me look real quick. Sorry.
Look at the calendar here.
Either January 6th or January 13th. I'm thinking more towards January 13th. I think we're going to do our year review on Galactic Gumbo on the 6th, I think. I'm not 100% sure. But it'll be one of those. We'll announce it, and I'll put it out, and I'm sure Fred will put it out on his forums. And we'll, definitely once we start seeing a brochure, we will definitely have an episode once that goes live, and we'll talk about all the frustration and the fan hate, and everyone's going to be moaning, pissing, and complaining about something, of course. You wouldn't be a true Joe collector if you weren't moaning and pissing.
John's looking forward
John.
to the entirely Sunbow-based convention set.
6 inch, John.
Shut your mouth.
6 inch Sunbow.
All right. Well, I do appreciate everyone who watched. We've been going on for 2 hours. We had up to 10 viewers at one time. That was good. I'm sure 5 of them were probably us watching ourselves.
Hi, Mom.
Yeah. But anyways, I appreciate y'all watching. We'll be back New Year. You can find me everywhere as Just Another G.I. Joe Show on all forums now, and Fred everywhere as Joe Battle Lines. And all these other guys, you can find them. Well, except for Bobby. Bobby doesn't do social media. It's probably a good thing he doesn't, because they'll be like, take that shit down.
Yeah, that's just a headache I don't want to deal with.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Happens too
Blood
much.
pressure.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you in 2018.
Thanks, guys.
Take it.